You know, I had always been curious to know what compels venture capitalists to put big bucks behind an entrepreneur. And unequivocally, they would say, beyond skills, knowledge, capabilities, and experience, the one thing they looked for is the ability for someone to walk through walls. It's a term they actually use, because the road to doing something new is filled with many hurdles. There are disappointments and setbacks and sacrifices. And so the only way you can plow through all of that is if you're compelled by a powerful why. Why am I here? And why am I doing this? In fact, Mark Twain said there are only 2 days that really matter in someone's life. The first is the day you're born, right? The second day is the day you figure out why. Not everybody gets the gift of a second day. It's a powerful gift. I'm going to tell you about my gift of a second day. It starts when I'm in Beijing. It's about the mid-90s. I'm there with a large global telecom company. I'm sure you know the name of this company, or maybe you did, Nortel. I was recruited to Nortel from college into a fast-track program where you rotate in different roles and different business units and different geographies around the world with the express intent of one day being a president. And so I started with them in Calgary. I came here to Toronto. I went to Raleigh, North Carolina. I went to London, England, and there I found myself in Beijing. I was at the end of my 2-year assignment. I was about to jet off to another location, and I thought I had it all. I had everything that was important to me at the time. You see, I had a career trajectory, I was seeing the world, and I was making a lot of money. And that was all incredibly important to me because I started my life in a very humble place. I grew up at the end of a little dirt road in northern Saskatchewan. Trust me, you don't know where it is. And I started my life there in a 1,000-square-foot home with 5 brothers, 3 sisters, my 2 parents. And this house had no running water, no electricity, and no plumbing. Now, imagine winters. Imagine all the knock-on benefits of that. So as you might imagine, life was challenging. And so from the time I was a little girl, I was bound and determined I was going to change my story. I was not going to be poor anymore. So I worked hard. I worked really hard to get to where I was. So it was a really good place for me. Until one day, I was walking through the forest on the way to the International Beijing University when suddenly I got bit by a bug, literally like a bug bite. Within 24 hours, I landed in the International Health Clinic, and I started to get the gift of my second day. It was when the doctor came up to me and he said, listen, I'm so sorry, but there is nothing more we can do for you here. We're going to have to send you over to the local Beijing hospital. And if any of you know what the local Beijing hospital system was like in the mid-90s, you would know the old adage was, it doesn't matter what you go in there with because you are never coming out. So I started negotiating with the doc. I said, doc, you cannot send me there. If you send me there, I will die. And he said, I'm sorry, but if you stay here, you're going to die. So that kicked off the beginning of a 2-month journey for me, where every night I would go to sleep not knowing whether I was going to wake up the next morning. And folks, trust me, there's something about that conversation that happens late at night with yourself that changes you. And it certainly changed me. I knew that if I got the gift of a second day here, that I could no longer be here just to change my story. I had to be here to change many people's stories. And yet at the same time, I knew that that story had to be very personal to me. And folks, it was not lost on me that here I was in Beijing trying to figure out how to order a soda from the vending machine with my cell phone. And yet, you cannot take a blood test and figure out what I have? Could we as a society be okay with all this money and talent and press going over just something so frivolous, when clearly there was a pretty basic human healthcare gap missing over here? And how could I have been working on this when clearly my life depended on this? So I knew that if I got the gift of the second day, I had to come back and change the story of healthcare. That I had to make it just as progressive and advanced, as sexy as the tech industry. So clearly I survived, I made it, I'm here. But it changed my life. So I quit my job. The company thought I was crazy. I said, no, I'm not crazy, I'm compelled. I moved to San Francisco, the home of biotech. And I said, listen, I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to cure HIV or cancer or hepatitis C myself. But I'm a good business person. And if I apply my business lens, from the tech industry to the life science industry, maybe, just maybe, I'll see something that nobody else has seen before. So I looked at how you commercialize in the tech sector, right, with a company. And it goes something like this. You give a couple guys a couple computers and a couple $100,000, and a couple years later, they can turn around and sell it to Microsoft or Yahoo or Google for $200 million. Right? It's kind of like a rap song. Fast and easy like that. You look at the life science industry, it's more like an opera. It takes you at least a year and quite a bit of money, millions of dollars, to get your infrastructure set up, buy your capital equipment, get your operations team in place, get your permits, your licenses. And then, and even then, it takes you what? 8 to 12 years to get a drug to market and billions of dollars. So folks, from the outside looking in, who in their right mind would start a life science company? By the time you get it to market, if you ever do, the only thing you're making is a difference, and folks, that's not sustainable. If you're an investor, which investor would you rather be? The investor who puts $500,000 into Instagram and sells it for $1 billion 2 years later? Or would you rather be the investor that puts $200, $300, and $400 million into an oncology play that has every likelihood of failing before it gets to market? Right? That was the problem we needed to solve. We needed to make it just as cheap and fast and easy to start a life science company as a tech company. And we needed to make it just as good a return on investment for an investor to get into the life science space as the tech space. So now, I've identified a problem. So how do you solve that problem? Well, I went back again to what I knew. Working in this big company, every place I went to, within a year, I had to get a project or a product up and running. It was very fast. And the way I could do that is because every place I went to, I landed, I had a place to go, there was infrastructure, I had an R&D team, engineering, I had sales and marketing, legal, etc. So all I had to do was focus on my project, right? So I thought, well, what if I could apply that to the life science industry? What if I could provide a big company infrastructure for early stage life sciences where they could get started quickly and easily and focus just on their product? So in the Bay Area, I got one of the local Bay Area governments to give me a $6 million grant. We built out a space, I leased a space, 36,594 square feet. I made half the space all common research space filled with equipment, the kind of equipment every company would need. The other half of the space I made into individual wet lab modules and office modules that started from something as small as a 5-foot bench, where literally a researcher could come out of a university within 24 hours, start pipetting, and put it on their credit card like a gym membership. So they weren't putting everything at risk. I hired an operations team to take care of all the day-to-day activities for the companies so they could focus on the science. I hired a business services team that could do everything from help that research project and that academic turn that into a company, provide business services along so they could scale and introduce them to funders. And within 5 years, our company's raised almost $2 billion. But more importantly than that, to me, these companies said that they could do in 8 months what had taken them 4 years to do before. Were we successful? So far, so good. Had we solved the industry problem? Not even close. Because the magnitude of the problem was so big, the only way you can do it is if you scale. So then, I decided to expand. I went to San Diego, and that's where I met Johnson & Johnson. And I tell you, the team that I met there had the same sort of entrepreneurial passion for the pursuit of patient solutions I'd only seen in small companies before. And together, we realized that if we put our respective assets and strengths together, we could do something even more amazing that could really solve a big problem in the industry. So we created our first JLABS. It was model 2.0 of what I had done before. And what was amazing about this is that we recruited scientists, some of the best and brightest minds from around the world. And so we thought, wow, this is amazing. Let's keep going. So we expanded to many sites around the United States, all of them in partnership with the local community to try to make it something where it has benefit for everybody, all the stakeholders involved. And so we sat back and we said, well, what's attracting all of these people? And it was everything that we wanted it to be, where you can get started quickly and easily without a lot of funding, where we could help build smart companies that could get the investment, that could get the partnerships, that they could get in and get started and they can get to a go or no-go decision without wasting their whole life savings. And more importantly, for investors, this model became very attractive. No longer did you have to put $10 million into one company with 10% chance of making it. Now you could put $1 million into 10 companies and one of them is going to hit. Savings in time and money. So over the course of the last 2 years, we've done 20 deals with some of these companies. And so this is attractive for us. It allows us to get to know entrepreneurs very early. When we attract the best and brightest minds, we get to learn with them. And we get to understand their technology. And we do this all no strings attached. We want those entrepreneurs to build value. We want you to be billionaires. We do. Because then you're going to come back and you're going to do it again and again and again. And when we look at you and what you need, it's not just about dollars and cents. We want to figure out who you are and what you need specifically, so we can do creative deal terms when you need them. And so these creative deal structures were only possible by creating another organization. We created our deal teams, our Johnson & Johnson Innovation Center deal teams. They exist in 4 locations around the world. California for the West Coast, Boston for the East Coast. Your Boston colleagues are here. London for Europe, and Shanghai for Asia Pacific. And they look at all the science that's going on and they say, if it's strategically interesting, let's figure it out. We can do something traditional. We can do an equity deal through our corporate venture arm, JDDC. We can do licensing, collaboration, co-development. But you know what else we can do? You're doing something pretty revolutionary. But we don't know if it's really going to work or not. And you don't want to take up a bunch of value by doing an equity investment. So tell you what, we'll do a proof of concept contract, 3 months, $100,000, no strings attached. We just want to learn with you. And we want you to build value. And so together, between JLABS and the innovation centers, our goal is to provide that bridge over that valley of death so that great ideas can become patient solutions. So we can get more of them and faster and even more progressive. So it's not just, filling a basic human healthcare gap like getting a blood test, but it can actually leapfrog us into a whole new world that rivals just how sexy tech is, right? So, did that gift of a second date change my life? Absolutely. Did it take me through many hurdles, disappointments, setbacks? sacrifices? You don't even know. But it kept us going, and it kept us going, me going, because I was able to meet a community of people that felt just the way I did. Our chief science officer at Johnson & Johnson was an infectious disease doc. He served on the front lines in Africa with HIV, TB, malaria. And he tells these stories about how he ended up having to treat some of his friends. In fact, one of his friends had a 4-year-old daughter, got a disease, and he treated him, and his friend was crushed. Didn't think he was going to be able to see his 4-year-old daughter grow up. And I'm happy to say that just recently his friend brought his 4th grandchild into the world. And that is the power of his call to action for us. And so I'm going to give this call to action to you because if you're here, you have that gift of that second day. Be it big, be it small, whatever you think it is, it's powerful. And we want to be part of your community. We want you to be part of our community. So, our call to action is this. To save one life is significant. To save millions of lives, now that's addictive. So please, come get addicted with us. Thank you.